Coogan's Bluff would be considered an important film as something of a prototype to Siegel and Eastwood's most famous collaboration, 1971's Dirty Harry. We had Eastwood, a character known for being amongst Western environments. In this case, he's a police officer from Arizona, and he finds himself in New York City, totally out of place and unprepared for the dangers that await him around every corner. Lee J. Cobb's police officer, chief, is trying to inform him that he's out of his depth. We have this, the cowboy plucked and thrown into the urban environments, and he's gonna take the law into his own hands. Well, in this film, he's not quite as ruthless or vigilante as Carrie Callahan, although we do have the aesthetic precedents, and also this is the introduction of this whole Clint Eastwood versus the counterculture thing, which kind of arises more so in 71's Dirty Harry. But Coogan's Bluff is a fun film. Don Siegel has a way of transforming material into these examples of how cinema can elevate standard fare into these kind of modernist spectacles, wherein we're glorying in the abundance and the kind of depth of detail of a cityscape, and yet we're enamored with these archetypes exemplified by Eastwood. Eastwood's kind of contemporary cowboy wandering amongst it. We have the caring sort of progressive female love interest, which is kind of probably just a jab at the budding second wave feminist movement in general in a kind of snarky way. I'm not sure if it would be appreciated today or even ought to be. Nevertheless, maybe not as tactful as even The Enforcer from '76, third Dirty Harry film. Anyway, but then there's also the villain of this film, which is a more overt attempt to demonize a sort of counterculture figure, depict, he's this LSDK taking long hair kind of guru figure who's, but he's got these phenomenal, terrific underworld connections. I suppose he's just more of a biker who's been, caught up and partying in the counterculture scene as well. I don't know if you could see it as a demonization of the hippie movement in general, but at one time I think everyone associated the counterculture with, Charles Manson and the Hells Angels. It was all lumped into the same world when, people who thought they could levitate the Pentagon and all of that. It was all tied together in its own way. People had no room for nuance, just like when they're looking at these movements now. But in any case, Coogan's Bluff serves as a great example of not just how Clint Eastwood was able to translate his spaghetti western persona into American action films, but also how Don Siegel sets the tone of films which would follow in the... Ultimately, you can credit a lot of this to Dirty Harry for really solidifying it, although I think it's important to note how Coogan's Bluff set the duo of Eastwood and Siegel a precedent for trying to really elevate. They elevated the material enough in Coogan's Bluff, but I think they wanted to elevate it to a degree wherein, they watch Coogan's Bluff and they think, what else can be done? And I think Dirty Harry is ultimately the metamorphosis of that, an extraordinary accomplishment again. I don't think it's necessarily one of the very, very best films from either, Clint Eastwood as a performer or from Don Siegel as a filmmaker, although it's absolutely one of the most important for both, I would say. I don't think anyone can take issue with that. Thanks again, my friends, immensely appreciated. Hope you enjoyed these screen caps here. Not bad, hey?